We are live, UFC 306 and Canelo versus Berlanga post-fight show right here on Fight Bananas. John Ramlakan, Johan Blanco, and we got the professor, John Radford, live from TNT Arena. My man, how was the experience there tonight?
Just unreal, bro. Unreal. The fights were amazing. Canelo is the face of boxing wholeheartedly. He's amazing. Caleb Plant and McCrumbie had the fight of the night. Berlanga and Canelo, put on an amazing show. And it's been surreal, bro. Surreal. Absolutely surreal.
And before we get too deep into the fight, how was the media experience all week for you and Dave?
I'm just glad I had El Presidente with me, Mr. David Van Auken, because he guided me through the excitement that I had and the nerves that I might have been with here and there. So he's still chilling. He's right here. He's right there.
The main man.
The man. But no, it's just been amazing, man. It's just the experience is just a fun fight week to have Nochi here at the same time as the Canelo fight. Just absolutely special. Special is the best, easiest way to put it. You know what I mean? A memory forever. Mr. Presidente, want to say hi?
What up, boys?
How was the night, my man?
Oh, just another Saturday.
Just another Saturday.
Yeah, for sure.
It was epic, man. Saw Canelo Alvarez live do his thing. Caleb Plant knocking someone out, man. It was crazy. It was great. It was maybe the word is bananas, maybe.
Bananas. And on top of that, I mean, UFC 306 and the presentation they had there in the Sphere, absolutely amazing. Probably they're going to win some sort of award with the animation and the presentation they had. Before every single fight, they built it like a story. They had a little bit of a clip and a little bit of a story leading into every fight, and it just made it feel more special. And every walkout was impactful. The main event was great, crazy. The entire night was honestly really good. There was a lot of really good fights on this card. So, I mean, let's get right into the main event. Suga Sean O'Malley gets defeated by Merab Dvalishvili. Absolutely dominant performance, in my opinion, but there was a couple of 48-47s. But Blake Schneider is joining us live. My man, how you doing? And thoughts on the main event?
I'm good, brother. Always great to see you. Johan, my guy, always great to see you. And the man, John Radford, professor himself, joining us live with Dave on scene. I love it. What's going on, guys? How we doing tonight?
Having a great time, buddy. Having a great time.
Hell yeah. I love to see it. What's going on, Dave?
Yo!
As far as the main card goes, man, or the main fight of the night, is it weird to say that this was one of the most hyped fights of the night and probably one of the most, I don't want to say underwhelming fights, because the fight itself, Merab came out and absolutely did exactly what Merab does, and he did it in peak fashion, man. There was no shame in his game, and he hit every facet of what his strategy was to a T. I thought he came out a little bit overamped, talking shit in the corner to the guy on the side. I thought that was a little odd. And just something I think I was confused. I know John was probably confused. The announcers were a little confused. But after that, he really kind of settled down, at least in terms of mentality. He was bouncing around the entire time. He wasn't let Sean really gauge the distance between him. He was keeping his distance really well, unless he was going to go in for a shot for a takedown. He was executing his takedowns perfectly. He wasn't setting himself up into dumb positions to be manipulated by the sniper that is Sean O'Malley. So Merab's strategy was fantastic, man. I mean, he was spot on for what he had to do. I say underwhelming in the fact that I really would have loved a knockdown, dogfight, drag out. But I don't know if we actually thought we were going to get to see that. You know what I mean? So overall, I thought the fight was good. It was definitely not the best fight on the card, of a card that was full of absolute monster fights. So, but overall, main card, I think, is probably what a lot of people expected for Merab to come in and really take it to Sean O'Malley in the ground game. And he did that to a T.
Absolutely. Now, we got live right from the streets of Vegas. Professor, did you guys get to catch the main event of UFC 306?
Whatever we want to do. We did get to catch it while we were at the presser. We watched most of the Merab fight and Sean O'Malley fight on the phone. To me, the gas tank was the biggest problem for O'Malley. That the pace that Merab pushed was just too much, and I don't think O'Malley could find the rhythm and the chaoticness of his bouncing movement and all of the takedown attempts. It was just kind of just too much. But hey, we love you guys. Thank you for having us on there. From El Presidente and the Professor, we're out. We'll catch you later, guys. Great job.
Safe travels, my guys. You guys have a good one. And we are back live. We got 3 guys right here, and we got, a crazy. It was just a crazy, honestly. The domination by Merab was something that I wasn't expecting as much as I did, because I knew he was going to be able to get the takedowns, but I thought he was going to have to deal with the range a lot more. I thought Sean was going to be able to kind of use that jab, kind of keep him on the end of his punches, but Sean was very hesitant. And after that first takedown, it just really seemed, like you said, to demotivate him and demoralize him after that. And once you saw the defeatedness, and once you saw the coaches of Sean O'Malley have to be the ones to be like, hey, you have to do something. You have to actually make this happen. Sean mentally had already lost his fight. So Merab, it was an amazing job, Merab, physically, and what he did inside of the octagon, but also what he just did to him mentally, draining him, being able to defeat him within the, fight before actually getting the actual win. Impressive on that. Johan, thoughts on the main event and Merab's domination?
Yes, I think there's a word for it. I think this is destiny. This was destiny for Merab, because if you looked at his winning streak, you looked at his win streak, his run to the title, it was something of pure domination, and I didn't think anything less of what was going to happen in this fight. I think one of the big factors, the professor already said it, conditioning was top notch. I think that played a big role, probably played the most important role, but also his movement on the feet. If you saw, he was feigning a lot, kind of changing levels before, getting the takedowns, making Sean O'Malley real hesitant to, try to throw any strikes and stuff like that. And that's what set up the takedowns, because Sean was so inactive, and it wasn't because, he was worried. Yes, he was worried about the ground game, but he was not. But Merab was just giving him so many looks, and that probably made him overthink. And when you overthink, you can't really throw at the pace you want to throw, or at the reaction time you want to throw at. But overall, this was an impressive performance. I know that Herb Dean was telling him to work the entire time, but that man was working for 25 minutes. I don't know what he's talking about. He even gave him some kisses, like, mwah, 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 mwah. I loved it. So, overall, I think we're seeing the start of a dominant reign. Granted, a few challengers in there that could give him a run for his money, but Merab, we could see a GOAT type of championship run with Merab Dvalishvili.
Absolutely. With his style, his cardio, it's just something that isn't something that doesn't really go away over time, right? Usually when somebody, especially in the lighter weight classes, rely on their power or rely on their quickness, you see it start to go down a lot more. Merab is relying a lot more on that conditioning and just his pure takedown abilities and his ability to smother you, right? It's not just about taking you down. It's about holding you. Those knees that he was able to implement, kneeing the thighs over and over again, those take effect. Like a knee like that to your leg deadens your leg. We got Sean Sterling in the house, the main man with Fight Bananas. Appreciate you. Tonight actually might win some awards. They were saying that on the broadcast. Like the presentation, if you weren't able to watch UFC 306, it was absolutely everything, and it lived up to the hype, if not more. The animations, the walkouts, the musics, the lighting of the arena, the ambiance, the outside, the exosphere, they call it, when they had the highlights going on. I was surprised nobody flew off the highway that was nearby watching those highlights, because how would you not get distracted by something like that? Absolutely amazing atmosphere. Props to the UFC. They need to go there again. Like Joe Rogan said it can't just be a one-time thing. It's going to be so hard to emulate this anywhere else. It was Mortal Kombat-esque at points, with the way the background was set up, the screen was set up. You had the animated, you're inside of the Mayan temples or inside the Aztec warrior background. It's just absolutely amazing presentation done by the UFC. Dana White, he overhyped it, and during the prelims, you didn't see it as much, but during the main card, oh my God, what a delivery. I want to change the turns a little bit and talk to Canelo versus Berlanga, because that was actually a pretty exciting main event. Canelo dropping Berlanga in the third round, but it seemed like once Edgar Berlanga was able to kind of wake up in that 6th, 7th round, he was actually had his swagger about him. He was moving on his lighter on his feet. He was throwing punches from his hips. He just had a little bit more fluidity to him. Made for a very exciting fight, especially when they were face to face at the end of rounds 11 or 10 and 11. They were face to face with the referee having to separate them. We got the main boxing man, Johan Blanco, here to talk about it. Break down that main event for Mexican Independence Day, Canelo versus Berlanga.
Well, listen, another entertaining performance from Canelo. 2 in a row. You know, he did it in May for Cinco de Mayo weekend. So he had to deliver again for Mexican Independence Day weekend. I think Edgar Berlanga it was a performance that I expected, but I was also impressed with. I wasn't expecting him to win any rounds, and I don't think he did on any scorecards. But I also was impressed with not only his cardio, his punch resistance, but also his sharpness through 12 rounds. Because I thought, once Canelo started to put the pressure, once Canelo started to kind of fight on the inside, I thought Edgar Berlanga was going to sink. I thought he was going to kind of crumble under that pressure and kind of, lose his composure. But he ended up being a lot more confident. And like you said, he had a swagger about him. Even in a losing effort, he had a swagger about him that almost made me believe that he belonged in that ring. Do I still think he doesn't? Yes, of course. Business is business. But the fight was exciting. I mean, from the first round to the last round was constant action. Berlanga tried to, if you looked in the beginning of the rounds, the first half, Berlanga tried to outbox him. Interesting strategy because the general consensus going in there was Canelo was the sharper boxer. But Berlanga tried to outbox him, try to fight on the outside, and it was a very interesting thing. And I think once he got knocked down in round 3, he kind of realized, all right, well, I got to pick up the aggression a little bit. So you saw him starting to throw a little bit more. He was still fighting on the outside, but he was starting to throw that jab a little more. And it was actually a sharp jab that he was throwing out there. I think Berlanga's performance was impressive for the expectation because there was zero expectation for Edgar Berlanga. If you looked at the odds, Canelo was minus 1,800 coming in, which is astronomical for a main event. But I was thoroughly impressed. I mean, a lot of people were questioning whether Edgar Berlanga was at that level. I think that even though, it was a pretty dominant performance for Canelo, I think Edgar Berlanga showed that he could fight at the level. Going 12 rounds with the best 168-pounder in the world, the face of boxing, that's something. That being said, on the flip side, this is one of Canelo's worst performances, even in a dominant fashion. Why? It's a guy that you're supposed to finish. It was a guy. I mean, in terms of intangibles, in terms of the contender that he's fighting, this was the lowest rated guy since losing to Dimitri Bivol. And it seemed like Canelo started to fade towards the end of the fight, which is not a rare occurrence, but it seemed like he was not able to – he was looking for the finish, and maybe because he was looking for the finish throughout the entire fight, it kind of drained him. Not a good look, but he got the win. He defended his unified super middleweight titles. I think that whatever happens next, he has to make a major adjustment because he's been fighting this real walk him down style, trying to, be very selective with his punches. But Canelo Alvarez, when he's the most successful, is very versatile, a very versatile boxer who can fight on the outside, who can fight on the inside, who uses a lot of level changes, who throws multiple combinations, not someone who just throws power shots. Because if you saw the fight, Canelo was loading up on a lot of shots, and Edgar Berlanga was actually making him miss a lot. It's not a good look. It's not a good look, especially if you're going to try to fight, Terrence Crawford or Dimitri Bivol again. Those guys are going to look through that. So I would say this fight, though, it delivered, but I think we saw some revelations between both boxers.
No, and I think with Canelo, like you said, I think after the third round when you dropped him, because I texted you actually after the first round, like, when is the Canelo fight starting? And you're like, it's right now. I started watching it round 2. I texted Blake the link, so he started watching it round 3. Just I think in time to catch the knockdown because we were texting him, at least texting him about it. But it seemed like after he got that knockdown, he was continually walking down Berlanga in the fight, and he was really just trying to get those hooks in after landing those power jabs. Right, back him up against the rope, go out for like a 3-4 punch combination, and kind of repeat from there. And it was a rinse and repeat strategy you saw for the entire fight. He didn't change or he didn't veer from that, and that's why I felt Berlanga kinda got more comfortable fighting off the back leg. He was able to kinda counter with some, pull right hands, a little bit of jabs peppering up Canelo as well, and he started to, because of the lack of diversity in the Canelo's game plan and fight execution, although he got the win, Berlanga was able to get a read for some of those things and just get more comfortable towards the end of the fight. Thus, he was able to just stand in his face after some of those rounds. Blake, what were some of your thoughts on the fight with Canelo and his performance tonight?
So I know you texted me about the fight, and I threw it on right as Berlanga was getting back up from the knockdown. But I was also juggling UFC, and I was trying to cook dinner at the same time. So I don't really have a great take. The one thing I did notice in the probably about 4 rounds that I kind of was able to pay attention at least a little bit to was that Canelo's jab just looked really tight. It was getting through all the defense for Berlanga, and he was keep backing him down. He kept backing him down into the corner. So I mean, the exchanges between the two, Berlanga, like you said, he did look a lot better as the fight went on, and he got a little bit more comfortable being able to maneuver. But I can't give the most articulate breakdown for it, but I did notice a crispy snap out of the jab of Canelo the entire fight.
And I think that jab was really what set up that left hook, because Berlanga was starting to paw a little bit more from eating some of those jabs. And then after pawing, he ate that left hook, went down. After that, what happened? Hey, that right hand was up. He realized he was like, he was not letting that right hand go. So smart adjustment there for Berlanga. Switching back gears to UFC, not going to spend too much time on this one, but Alexa Grasso and Valentina Shevchenko trilogy tonight. Absolutely dominant performance by Valentina Shevchenko, right? She did what she had to do. This is what I expected her to do. Honestly, this is what I expected her to do the first and second fight, right? This is probably what you expected to happen. Alexa Grasso had, her moment, kind of her Juliana Pena moment, right? But at least she was able to defend the belt as well. But Valentina Shevchenko is just the most dominant female fighter, in this division, or if not right now, just in the UFC, right? So she's just, her resume is absolutely female GOAT status, if not up there with Amanda Nunes. And man, her performance was dominant. It wasn't the most exciting thing, but it was absolutely dominant. I don't know how she was an underdog either, Sean. Anybody that bet that's easy money right there. Blake, any thoughts on this one for the UFC co-main event tonight?
Yeah, I remember watching the first Shevchenko versus Grasso fight, and I had actually edged it. It was a very close fight. It was a very good fight. I had edged it just slightly for Shevchenko.
The second one.
No. The first one.
First fight, she got choked out.
Oh, I'm sorry. You're right. You're right. My bad. So then this one I didn't edge anything close to. Shevchenko maybe got it. She definitely got it this time. I'm sorry. My apologies. Bad memory. But no, I thought that Grasso, just everything that she did right in the first fight, Shevchenko had an answer for in this fight. I mean, almost everything. Now, she did have a couple. She was very active on the ground from guard position. She tried to slip in quite a few different submissions. She almost had a guillotine choke that we thought. I mean, the ref kept checking up Shevchenko, and at one point, Grasso even was yelling at the ref. She went out. And I didn't necessarily see her go out. It looked, because she has such a stoic face, you can't really tell if she's out or if she's just in a tough position, like any fighter would be in that position. But Grasso was at one point yelling at the referee, she went out. That was about the closest Grasso had the entire fight to really having any type of advantage or possible way out against Shevchenko. Shevchenko had an answer for everything. She looked fantastic. I thought her ground game, we always talk about her stand-up game. She's up there, like you said, the Amanda Nunes is the Joanna Jaceks. Like her stand-up game is fantastic. She showed everybody that, hey, you can't sleep on my ground game, because what she does great, and maybe this is just the Russian in her, but she takes information and she downloads it. If you beat her one way, I promise you will not beat her again that same way. She downloads information so well. She learns as a fighter. She adjusts, she adapts, and she overcomes. And I think that's exactly what she showed against Grasso this time. She looked fantastic. And really, I think she not only aggravated Grasso, the fact that she wasn't able to do anything, but she really disappointed. She made Grasso disappointed in her own performance, but I don't think it was because she thought she could have done better. I think it was because nothing was working for her. I mean, there was nothing working for her because everything she wanted to do, Shevchenko countered. It was fantastic. She's, in my opinion, easily on the Mount Rushmore of greatest women fighters of all time, and it's not even a question if you ask me.
Not even a question at this point. There was another one, the reverse triangle, that Grasso
Yes.
had. I did think that was a little closer than maybe it actually was, because Valentina did seem to slip out only after a few seconds. But like you said, props to Alexa for at least throwing up a good amount of subs on the ground. There was a
she
few
was
that
active.
were really nice. But Johan, thoughts on this fight, my man?
Yeah, I mean, it was a dominant performance. I'll keep it short and simple. I mean, Valentina Shevchenko, I mean, timing was on point today. I mean, from the moment round one hit and Alexa tried to throw, Valentina countered like sharply, and I was like, oh man, this is a wrap. This is almost going to be a wrap. If she gets it to the ground, I mean, where's the advantage going to be? It's like Valentina is not a puzzle. She's like a terribly constructed maze. Like once you walk in, you can't fucking get out. You're fucked. You have no strategy. Excuse my language, but no, this was honestly a very, I mean, not just an impressive performance. We're back to Valentina Shevchenko's run. We're back to a Valentina Shevchenko performance. Back to before the Alexa Grasso loss, where she was dominating the flyweight division. That is where we're at again with this performance. I'm excited to see what happens. I mean, there's a few new contenders that I'm wanting to see at 125, but overall, this is her night. I think that if the second run's half as good as the first run, her legacy might just be, the GOAT debate might be, not settled, but like a lot closer.
No, she's definitely up there. This was Valentina Shevchenko tonight. Shout out to all my Yu-Gi-Oh fans, if any of you guys are out there. But Valentina's out there like the labyrinth wall in Yu-Gi-Oh. But yeah, just absolutely dominant performance. I'm curious to see who's next. I think there's a lot of people calling for someone. I can't remember off the top of my head. It's 249 right here. So we'll get right into the next fight, though. Diego Lopez, passing of the guard, passing of the torch, however you want to call it, dominates Brian Ortega within the first 15 seconds, hits him with a right hook, left hook combination that puts him down. And honestly, it seems like Brian Ortega is one of those dudes that really just doesn't start fighting until he gets knocked down or until he gets hurt. Even if it's rolling his ankle before the fight, he seems to need something to hurt him before he actually wakes up. But man, Diego Lopez, absolutely dominant fight. First round, knocks him down, like I said, with the hook. Second round, I believe it was where he knocked him down with the leg kick. Johan, I'll let you start on this one, my man. How do you feel about this fight? And what's your thoughts on the potential ceiling of Diego Lopez?
Yeah, well, listen, before I talk about Diego Lopez, I never knew that Brian Ortega and Peter Griffin were so similar in the fact that they never learn. After all the shots that he's been taking, you know what I mean? Getting a record landed on him by Max Holloway, getting pieced up by Alexander Volkanovski, getting dropped by Yair Rodriguez, and getting dropped today, you would think he would learn. But it is what it is. We all know that Brian Ortega has the biggest heart in the UFC, so it was still a gutsy performance. That being said, I was thoroughly impressed with Diego Lopez. He did fade a little bit after, after that first sequence, but overall that performance was convincing, man. And he's so versatile. That's the word I could describe him as, versatile. can get it done on the feet, good wrestling, solid wrestling, creative striker, someone that's very explosive, looking for the finish. He's someone that could be a problem. If he just fine tunes the strategy, his cage strategy, he's going to be a guaranteed champion once he fine tunes that. You know what I mean? There's a bit of inexperience with his approach. That's the only thing. I mean, it's very exciting. You know what I mean? But you could tell after that finish or after that sequence where he dropped him, he was just trying to go for the kill, and that kind of it's almost like he threw out his original game plan, and then you saw him kind of rebuild it throughout the fight. Overall, though, I think that it was a awesome performance by him. I mean, I think Dana White said he shouted to him that he's number 3 now. I mean, he needs to now elite competition, elite of the elite. You're now in there with the best at 145?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, you know what I mean? But overall, I mean, if he's able to, just kind of mature his game, he's gonna be a champion at 145.
He definitely has that potential. Shout out to Christopher J, main man, saying, "What's good? How you doing, my man? Hopefully all is well with you." But I think to your point, Diego Lopez is still a little raw with his talent, right? Very talented, but still very little, or still very raw. Needs a little bit more refinement. But a performance like this against a guy like Brian Ortega, 3 rounds, going through the adrenaline dump of dropping him in the first round and making it through that, still like you said, rebuilding that game plan. These are the type of performances, and these are the type of fights that you need to allow yourself to grow into that championship fighter. So I think a performance like tonight is going to do wonders for long term in his career versus if he would have just got him out there the first round, because I don't think he would have learned or taken away as much. Justin Queen saying Merab has 0 stand-up. When you have enough takedown game, that kind of sets up the stand-up. It's kind of like why Khabib dropped Conor, right? So, it's just one of those things. You kind of have this takedown game. Your opponents have to drop their hands more anyways. He didn't really need the stand-up tonight, right? He got the win anyway. So, yeah, he still did his thing. But Blake, thoughts on Diego Lopez, man, and thoughts on his potential future as well?
Oh, the future is about as bright as my ring light right here, my man. I mean, it's about as bright as the sun. It's about as bright as the sphere was tonight with all of its video and light shows was going on. Diego Lopez is, and this is going to sound funny, but I want to see what your guys' opinion is. To me, he is a more refined and probably a more talent version of what Diego Sanchez was when he was in there. He's got so much power in his hands that he hits you like he does this thing where if he hits you, it's not, oh wow, that was a good hit. It's any one of those hits could be lights out because there's that much power behind it. And Brian Ortega found out in the first 15 seconds. He is a more polished and more refined and younger and more natural version of what Diego Sanchez was. Diego Sanchez was a highlight reel when he stepped into the ring. The problem was he wasn't well-rounded. He wasn't the most amazing raw talent. He just had so much devastation in the hands. The Diego Lopez reminds me of a little bit more contained and a lot more skilled, actually, Diego Sanchez. And I don't know if that sounds crazy to you guys, but the highlight factor that this kid brings to the octagon, the amount that he still has to grow, but where he's at right now, you're knocking down a guy who is a top 3 opponent or a top 3 contender. He is, I don't know if you necessarily consider Brian Ortega a legend, but he's one of those guys that will ring through the annals of history within the UFC because of what he's done in the octagon and how he's done it and who he's done it against. You will never forget the name Brian Ortega. Also, his eyes. I mean, fucking those things could capture anybody. I'm just saying. Let's be honest. They're fucking crystal blue. No homo. Anyway, I thought the weird thing about the fight was that Brian was so stunned and caught off guard, and he got so stunned off that first hit. He didn't really use his ground game like we know Brian Ortega can do, and tried to go toe-to-toe with Diego, which I would not recommend to the majority of people in this division. I thought it was a little off for somebody who I think is a pretty high IQ fighter, but it kind of goes on par with the last couple fights we've seen him have. He doesn't seem to be quite the same. I'm not saying he's anywhere near retirement, but I just think it's one of those things where he's in kind of this weird skid right now, and he needs to bounce out of it. Brian Ortega does, because this guy is coming and he's hungry, and there's a lot of talent in this division, and Brian seems to be slipping down the slope. But overall, Diego Sanchez, way to go, my man. What a performance in at UFC Noche in the Sphere. What a place to put on your talents, man.
Yeah, I mean, it's like you said, it just seems like he's just more developed, right? You kind of have Diego Lopez, who's the more refined version of Diego Sanchez, who's the more refined version of Go Diego Go, right? So I think that's just the evolution that we've seen throughout all of this. So yeah, I mean, it's like you said, I think this just shows the growth of MMA, right? Diego Sanchez, the nightmare, one of those guys, absolutely savage back in the day, but he also ate a lot of damage, right? He also took a lot of shots as well. Diego Lopez suffered a couple early losses in the UFC, but really seemed to learn from those. And now he's kind of on a really good tear. Yeah, like you said, I mean, in a way, Ortega is falling off, but he did show some things tonight. Like he tagged Ortega with Lopez with a couple of good punches there. And I just think tonight was a really good learning experience for Diego Lopez. You know what I mean? And Sean, I think, puts it in the best way. This isn't wrestling or boxing. It's no ring. It's the octagon, right? So I
think Sean's talking to me. I think I said ring instead of octagon. My bad.
Oh, Sean. No, I think he's more talking maybe potentially to the barbecue. But it was kind of funny seeing some of the Merab in there, just kind of shadow boxing. It was almost like, you see some of those in lower level MMA fights, just the air shadow boxing to keep the distance, but it worked. You know what I mean? Does he get the winner of Mosar versus Sterling? I think that's a perfect number one contenders fight. You know what I mean? I think the winner of that fight versus Diego Lopez, and you have Max versus Ilya already happening. Where does Alexander Volkanovski fit into all this? That's maybe the next question. But hey, Diego Lopez versus Alexander Volkanovski. Maybe that's a fight we see. Or if Max wins, obviously they probably throw Volkanovski back there too. But I want to talk about potentially the best fight of the night. And if this wasn't the best fight of the night, potentially one of the best fights of the year, right? We had Ribovic versus Daniel Zellhuber. First two rounds, absolutely razor thin. But in the third round, this is where shit just got crazy. Zellhuber with a beautiful step-in elbow, dropping Ribovic early in the round. But later in the round, absolutely clean right hand by Ribovic. Wobbles him, hits him with like a 70-punch combination. Zellhuber still on with his back against the fence, absolutely rocked and wobbled, still moving his head, still staying up afloat somehow. Johan texting me, how is this man staying up? One of the best rounds that you will ever see, ever. Both guys got dropped. Ribovic was able to get the win. The third round, like I said, was I think 70 or 80 significant punches that he threw in that fight. But man, that was, if you didn't know about those first two fighters, learn quick, right? Those were two exciting fights. I think that perfectly started off the night. But Johan, I'll let you start about this one, man. Thoughts, or what was just going through your mind during that third round?
I mean, I texted you. I was like, how did he not like go down after that first right hand? Like that first right hand, you saw his instant reaction. Like he wobbled, and I thought he was literally going about to fall down, and he managed to not only evade a few of the punches, but then when he got backed up to the fence, you saw him literally doing solid head movement in a daze, and I was like, how is this even happening? And then finally, when he gained semi-consciousness, not even full consciousness, he started throwing, and I was like, oh my gosh, I hope someone gets dropped at this point. I hope someone gets dropped. This is crazy. But that whole exchange, that whole round was like, honestly, that whole round deserves to be in the UFC Hall of Fame. Just if we could just put a round in the Hall of Fame, that round has to be in there. That was one of the craziest rounds I think I've ever seen in combat sports. That fight, though, it was close. Like you said, it was close in the first 2 rounds, and I think that third round kind of, sealed the deal for Ribovic. Going into this fight, I was very high on Daniel Zellhuber because he's been a very touted prospect, especially in Mexican MMA. He's been a very touted prospect because he's so versatile, and you saw that versatility today. The way that he was throwing, the way that he strikes, he's real long. He's very crisp with his boxing, has very educated feet. But Ribovic, man, that man's a killer. That man also very sharp with his boxing, but he just has that. He has that a little of the roughness around him. He's a little rough around the edges. Really aggressive when he needs to be, and he just that overhand right. That thing is a killer right there. In the third round, that thing was heavy. I think if it was another fighter, out instantly, but overall, this fight lived up to the hype because these guys, these were two highly touted prospects, and I think that I think both of them, both Ribovic and Zellhuber, are very high. I don't think neither of their stocks dropped in this one.
Very good point. I think, like you said, this is one of those fights where both guys really came out winners, right? Because they're both gonna have, no, this is gonna go down as fight of the night for sure. When it comes to that side of things, but for Ribovic, he was actually having a tough time going through the length of Zellhuber for the beginning of this fight, right? It was one of those things where Zellhuber really was using his length well, but Ribovic, when he's able to get it going, he just was able to go, and he was just not stopping at that point when he was able to go that. Same thing, Blake, I'll ask you the same question. Thoughts going through your head during that crazy third round of this fight?
I don't think I sat down that entire third round. I could not sit down with the amount of punches that were landed by both parties. I mean, Zellhuber, he has the length and apparently one hell of a fucking chin on him, because goddamn, Ribovic was landing with dynamite in his hands, and he could still not put Zellhuber away. I was high on Zellhuber coming in. I know Ribovic was good. I think Zellhuber was 15-1 coming into this fight, so I was really excited to see kind of what the prospect would do and really how he would kind of solidify his name going forward. But god dang, I don't even care that he lost, honestly. The fight itself, both men put everything on the line and proved everything that they needed to. Ribovic proved that he can go out there and go toe-to-toe with a guy who I think had superior boxing in Zellhuber. And Zellhuber proved he can go toe-to-toe with anybody with the chin that he had on him. He should have been dead in that ring, John. I mean, he should have died from any one of those punches. And the fact that he was still somehow able to take about 16 to 17 unanswered shots and then get on the fence, do a rope-a-dope, wear Ribovic out, and then continuously land a crisp jab that whole time. And his jab had so much snap in it. It had so much power in it. The fact that neither one of those guys went down, because they both hurt each other in that third round. I mean, both guys were hurting. First was Zellhuber, then with Ribovic. I'm not surprised that they gave it to Ribovic, because I thought even though the first two rounds were razor thin, I thought Ribovic just did a better job of landing and then deflecting just a little bit more than Zellhuber did. Zellhuber still landed a bunch of really good shots. He just didn't deflect as many as I thought, and his defense was a little lax, which is probably how he got caught in the first place. But god dang, man, this was 100%. There was 3 times tonight where I said, this is fight of the night. This is fight of the night. This is fight of the night. That was the last time I said, this one is the fight of the night. And if we get this one wrong, I swear to God, I'm going to kill the judges or whoever is making these. I'm going to strangle them, I swear. Because this was one of the best fights I've seen this year.
100% one of the best fights I've seen. And just two young guys just going at it with no regard. Like you said,
on the line.
Putting it on the line. They both easily could have tapped out. Both easily could have folded and called it a night. But they just decided it wasn't time for them. And just incredible night. We don't have the fight of the night performances out just yet, but I mean, guaranteed that's going to be the one for sure.
Has to be.
Last fight of the night, we'll talk about the opener, Ode Osbourne versus Rodriguez. Absolutely another nuts fight, right? Ode Osbourne with a clean right hook in the first round, able to drop his opponent, but then Rodriguez comes right back, second and third round, gets the takedown, able almost to finish him with a couple of, ground and pound elbows from the top. But just exciting fight overall. You know, another one, right? Comeback fight. You thought that Rodriguez was done. He actually eyes roll back in the back of the head, woke up on the way down type thing, right? But and Sean, I actually do agree with you. I was one of those people. I do think that he won that third round, right? In the beginning, he was landing the jabs. He was actually moving really well. And it wasn't until the last 30 seconds that Rodriguez got the takedown, ended up on top, and got some punches. But I still think the majority of the round went to Ode, and I think round 1 and round 3 was for him. I know 2 of the judges gave Rodriguez a 10-8 in that second round, which was absolutely insane. You had two 29-27s cards, which made no sense to me because I did think Ode won the fight. I understand giving Rodriguez it because it was just that close, but I do agree with you, Sean, on this one. Blake, I'll let you open up on this one. Did you think the right person got the win, and thoughts on this fight too? It was another exciting one.
I think it was close. I did not agree with the 10-8 scoring of any round in that fight. To me, that's ridiculous. We've harped too many times on this show about UFC judging and MMA judging. So I'm not going to even go down that road here and bore the listeners. But this was another one, right before. This was the first fight we saw. And this is what the second fight of the night where I said, well, this is fight of the night. It was like, the second round was 10-8. First round was 10-8. Yeah, exactly. Thank you. Sean's got some fucking sense to him, like we always know he does. But geez, dude, it made no sense. It was way closer at the minimum. Yeah, obviously I thought 10-9. Ode starched Rodriguez right off the rip. And like even my I'm watching with my girlfriend Peyton, and even she's like, because they showed the replay in between round 1 and round 2. Can't believe he didn't finish him. All shouts out to Rodriguez. What a way to recover from that, because that looked devastating. But even my girlfriend was like, yep, there's the first punch, there's the second punch. He doesn't know where he's at. Eyes in the back of his head. like right. She even was like, how is he conscious right now? So if that tells you anything about how that fight was going. No, all shouts out though to Rodriguez. He was able to come back. He was able to stay into that fight. I also believe that Ode edged out that third round to get a 2-1 win in rounds. I wasn't super disappointed because the fight was so good that I wasn't going to harp on the decision. Maybe if I go back and rewatch it, I might feel a little bit more, zesty about the decision. But in my opinion, I do think Ode won. Either way, what a great card, or what a great fight to start off the main card.
Absolutely. And like you said, just a great card overall. Johan, thoughts on this fight, and then start us off on closing thoughts, my man. Just thoughts on just overall the night at UFC, and also just Canelo's just performance and everything we've gotten here in Mexican Independence Day.
Yeah, so I actually have no thoughts on it because I was watching Caleb Plant versus Trevor McCumbee at the same time, and that was actually a banger fight too. If you didn't watch it, you truly missed out. So I'll just go to my closing thoughts. I think Mexican Independence Day delivered. I think the biggest thing coming into today was UFC versus boxing. Who was going to outshine who in this? Because they're same night, same city, just miles apart. Sphere versus T-Mobile Arena. Canelo headlining boxing. The Sphere, the UFC's first event there. It was the talk of the town, and I think that I think fight fans won it tonight. You know what I mean? I think fight fans won. I think both cards didn't disappoint. I think they excelled. I think the presentation for the UFC at Noche was, in and of itself, that sold me on the card in and of itself. If all the fights were just shitters and snoozers, I would have been like, dang, at least I got that artwork. At least I got that. That's a consolation if I needed one. But the fact that at least even the first two fights, that the fact that those delivered, it sold me for the fight, for the thing. And then we got 2 new champions in the UFC. That's always good. New champions, it gives fresh new matchups. That's always exciting. And then boxing, man. I mean, this year in boxing, you're seeing a lot more stacked cards. You know what I mean? It's usually always top heavy. In the past, it's always been top heavy, with just the last two fights kind of being the ones that people are attracted to. But now you're seeing in boxing that these cards are being filled with former world champions or exciting matchups. And that happened again today. Obviously, Canelo was the main attraction, but then you get the co-main event, Erislandy Lara versus Danny Garcia, which ended up being a real snoozer. I actually fell asleep in that fight, so I had to turn it on to UFC so that way I didn't fully fall asleep. But that was like heading into it, that was a big fight. And then Caleb Plant and Trevor McCumbly, that actually over delivered, and they kind of proved to everybody that you don't need an O to be a pay-per-view guy. You know what I mean? You can still have losses on your record if you just put on good performances for the fans. They're gonna tune in. That fight, probably fight of the night for the boxing card. And then you had Rolly Romero, who is somehow a former world champion. He won. I don't know how, but you just had all these banger cards. You had all these banger fights on this one card. I think that, what a Mexican Independence Day. I'm ready for Cinco de Mayo, because if we're going to get bangers like this on Mexican holidays, I'm about to switch nationalities.
Blake,
Wait,
final
you're
thoughts,
not
my man.
Mexican?
I'm Filipino. I'm Asian.
Blake, final thoughts, my man.
Your last name is Spanish for white.
I'm Filipino.
All right. I don't want to get long-winded on this, but I got a couple things that I really want to say, because I don't know, John. I know you mentioned you probably didn't get to see any of the prelims, did you?
No.
Okay.
Well, Aldana versus main event. I didn't get to see
of
that
course.
one.
That's why I'm here. So I'm just going to run down the list real quick, because
split open on her forehead versus her and Norma Dumont. That was absolutely insane. I do want to say that,
dude. And that's really all I want to talk about from that fight. Norma Dumont came out, did her thing. She looked good. She jumps up over Aldana. Norma was a 9, I believe, and Aldana was a 5 at the 5 spot. But Dumont really what happened was it was an inadvertent headbutt when the two ladies clashed together. It was not intentional, but she opened up Aldana's cranium. One of the worst forehead gashes I've ever seen. I mean, it was about a 2-inch split from the top to the bottom, just above her eyebrow. And the blood was flowing, my man. And it was not even her time of the month. I promise you that. It was just flowing. It was like the Red Sea. She was gushing everywhere, but it didn't really hinder her performance too much. She hadn't done a crazy amount to stifle Dumont up to that point, but it didn't stop her from fighting, and it didn't stop her from still trying to put combos together. And what I thought was even funnier is at one point, Dumont tried to grab Aldana, and Aldana looked like she just started rubbing the blood all over Dumont's face, which I thought was a badass move. If you're like, hey, I'm not winning, I'm just gonna bleed all over you. It's one thing when you see guys do it, but something about when the ladies do it, it is just even grittier, man. You're just like, oh my God, this is disgusting, and I'm here for it. I love it. But yeah, it was that fight. That was probably the least exciting fight of the first 5 fights. Ignacio Bahamondes versus Manuel Torres. Bahamondes landed a nasty shot in the first round. Towards the very end, with about 58 seconds left on Manuel Torres, knocked him out. He gets the win. Ketlin Souza versus Yasmin. She was the underdog in this fight, landed a nasty overhand left, and then got on top of her immediately like a spider monkey, got around to her back, had great positioning and great movement on the ground, and she was so quick. She got on her back quicker than a lot of people I've seen, and was able to sink in a rear naked choke. That was absolutely beautiful. She goes on, and she was rocking red tonight. Like, everything about her performance, she looked fantastic. Was able to get a dirty knockdown, not dirty, but she was able to get a great knockdown, and then cinched right up into a rear naked choke. The smoothness in which she transitioned from the hit to the choke reminded me of when Mighty Mouse went from the takedown transition to the armbar. Do you guys remember this? That was one of the smoothest transitions I've ever seen. This was up there on par with just how smooth Ketlin's movement was. And then if you guys did not see it, well, obviously we had Raul Rojas Jr. Fighting, and I feel like I'm pronouncing this guy's name wrong every time. Aroki Lang.
Areki Lang, I think it is.
Aroki Lang.
I thought it was Chiwiwi.
No, that's Rojas.
I know.
But that was a pretty solid fight. But Rojas looked really good. He looked better on his feet than he has. But then when he implemented the ground game like he has been doing, he was able to solidify the win. He didn't get any submissions, but he was just dominating for quite a while. He got full mount like 2 or 3 different times, was able to get the back control, had the triangle body lock. So like he was just controlling Aroki Lang the whole time. And if you guys did not see it, Joshua Van versus Edgar Cairez, holy crap. This was the first fight. This was the second fight of the night. This was the first fight where I said, this is fight of the night. This has to be fight of the night. These two went at it. I believe Joshua Van came out and within the first minute dropped Edgar Cairez with a nasty bomb. And then you thought the fight was over. He was landing hits left and right. And then Cairez somehow scrapped his way out of it, started to play a little defense. But this was a fight where just like the Zellhuber fight, you're like, this is going to be stopped anytime in the next 5 seconds. Like this fight is over. It's done. Edgar Cairez comes back. He ends up clipping Joshua Van with an elbow. Van's now stumbled, and then it's just a war back and forth. And you're like, I can't believe this guy came from near death to then stunning. I mean, it reminded me of the Chet Congo versus Pat Barry fight. Yeah, where it was like back and forth. How did you come back from that? How did you come back from that? It was such a good fight. If you guys didn't get to watch that, go back and watch that fight. It ended up ending in a unanimous decision for Joshua Van. But dude, the fight was awesome. I could have told you that fight went either way. I know it was unanimous and I agree with it, but like I could see an argument if somebody wanted to make it. That was the prelims. Anyway, as far as the overall Noche in the sphere, wow. I never want to watch UFC another way. I hope every single UFC fight is like this. What I thought was awesome, and I think John mentioned this earlier, the cinematics that was
between every fight. I mean, this should win some, like you said, this should win some award for, and maybe they have to create an award for the best cinematic sporting event, because this is better than any Super Bowl I've ever seen. This was time and dedication. They really delved into the history of what fighting is in Mexico and the history of a warrior. And through the ages and the time, they changed up all the scenery. They changed from the prelims to the main card. They changed up the scenery from fight to fight. The ring girls, they weren't just wearing bikinis and looking hot and being like, oh, look at me. They were wearing traditional garb. They were changing outfits. I mean, the whole thing, top to bottom, absolute A1 Oscar-winning performance. Emmy, Oscar, Grammy, Sean's staying it the right way, man. I think they're gonna get it all, man. I think just whatever award it's gonna be. But it was just an amazing night overall. I think they promised a lot, but they delivered. It's very rare to say that you can, to say something like that. The presentation absolutely delivered, but the night of fights were absolutely amazing. We're pulling up on 3:20 here on the East Coast. We appreciate everybody who's joined us live. Of course, Sean, we had Up and Smoke Reaction Channel joining us from YouTube as well. Couple other people we had Justin in here, Christopher J, of course, John Radford and Dave Van Auken popping in earlier. Oh, and he's actually back as soon as we said his name.
Oh, wow.
Right back up. We're closing out right now, John. Final thoughts on tonight.
Dude, it's crazy. Sorry.
Are you guys getting pulled over? You guys getting arrested? What's going on there?
I'm getting in trouble. I gotta let you go.
All right. Well,
I jaywalked.
Take care. Oh,
yes, sir.
Jeez. Well,
he's
that's
actually
the way to end the show.
End the show.
Well, y'all boys have a good night, and you guys be safe out there.